All right, and now we move to the co-main event of the evening in the UFC's 170-pound, excuse me, welterweight division. You got a battle between the number 13 ranked Neil the Haitian Sensation Magny going up against the number 14 ranked Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. Magny comes into this fight with a record of 26 victories and 9 defeats, I'm sorry. While Daniel Rodriguez comes back with a record oh my god, of 17 victories and 2 defeats, 7-1 overall in his UFC career. This is a really solid matchup. It's solid matchmaking. Based on the fact that this main event almost fell through due to the issues over there in Brazil, I was actually surprised that they were able to find a flight for Amanda Lemos and I believe Poliana Viana, who's also on this card, but earlier on the undercard. You know, Magny versus Rodriguez is a great fight. And you look at Daniel Rodriguez, he was obviously supposed to be going up against Kevin Holland at UFC 279, but the last minute change of events obviously saw Hamzat fight Holland, and then D-Rod fought the Leech at a catchweight of 180. And I know a lot of people were mad that D-Rod got the decision, but to be honest, I think it was the correct decision. I think 29-28 in the favor of Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez was the right call. He was jabbing him up. He was jabbing him up a lot. And a lot of the times when the shots looked like they were landing for the Leech, D-Rod was getting his guard up and moving just outside of range. Like, they were hitting him, but he was blocking his shots. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Josh Emmett-Kelvin Kattar fight, and maybe they gave the decision to Josh Emmett because it looked like more of the shots were landing than actually were landing. Obviously, that's a little bit different here because D-Rod did get the decision and it wasn't the Leech. But I know a lot of people were really mad, but honestly, I'm not mad at it. I think D-Rod did enough to bank 2 out of the 3 rounds. I definitely think the Leech won the second round, I believe it was. You know, he landed the bigger shots. He was pushing the pace. He was pushing forward. But I think D-Rod did enough to win the first and the third, if I remember the fight correctly. I'm pretty sure it was first and third for D-Rod and then second for the Leech, Li Jingliang. But, you know, D-Rod has a very, very technical boxing approach. He uses his kicks, but it's mainly just low kicks. There's really no body kicks. There's really no high kicks. He trains with Joe Stitch 'em Up Schilling, but he's really just very effective at getting the outside foot on the orthodox opponent. He fights out of southpaw. We've talked about southpaw versus orthodox and the tendencies that these guys have. You know, it's easier for the southpaw to get the outside foot on the orthodox fighter, and they usually use the check right hook, which is their lead hand, over the jab or around the jab of the opponent to get that outside foot and then come with either a straight left or an overhand left or follow it up with the left hook behind the right hook. And D-Rod is one of the best at this. He's very good at using the jab. He jabs very effective. It's very good timing, no real windup in it. And I think that Neil Magny can potentially get caught with the jab. And he's very good at pairing up the jab with the lead right hook to get the outside foot on the orthodox fighter and then follow up with an overhand left on an angle or a straight left down the middle. He was catching Kevin Lee over and over. He was catching the Leech the longer the fight played out, and his jab was really effective. That was probably the most effective strike that he had throughout the entirety of the fight. And I think the Leech was more effective to the legs and to the body with his kicking game, but D-Rod was more effective with the boxing and the shots up top to the head. And I think that's part of the reason that D-Rod won that decision. But you look at the stats for this fight between Magny and Rodriguez. We have 6'3" for Neil Magny to 6'1" for Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. So a 2-inch height advantage for Magny and also a 6-inch reach advantage. I mean, we know how Neil Magny fights. It's pace, it's pressure, it's cardio. It's using the long range shots, the jab, the 1-2. Really, that's his most effective weapons is the jab and the right hand behind it, the 1-2, mixing up his combinations, throwing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 punch combos. And I think he has the longer reach. He's the taller guy against D-Rod. That definitely can work. But another thing is the reason that that shot or that style works on a lot of opponents is because it works on the guys who don't really angle off too much and they kind of just move forward in a straight line. When you move forward in a straight line, it's easier to get caught with the straight punches. It's easier to catch them with the jab. It's easier to catch them with the right cross. It's easier to, you know, push the pace and maintain that, you know, pace against guys who don't really use a lot of head movement, number one, or who just fight on a straight line and don't really move laterally left or right and cut the ankles, whether it's with the L step, whether it's with, you know, hip bumps, changing the angle, getting the outside foot. The thing with Daniel Rodriguez is he's so effective as a counter striker. I'm sorry, I can't talk. He's so effective as a counter striker that with those long range shots, I think that he can get that outside foot on Magny. I think that right hook can be there. Now he's at a big reach disadvantage. That's going to be an issue. But I think if anybody can find a way to close the distance, it's going to be D-Rod. I mean, the guy has shown nothing but success in the UFC aside from that loss to Nicholas Delby. I mean, he almost got knocked out by Dwight Grant, but then came back and knocked him out. But I think Magny, he's a pressure fighter. It's a lot of 1-2s. It's a lot of, 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combinations, and he picks it up as the fight goes. He fought the Leech Li Jingliang and had a dominant performance back at, I believe it was UFC 248. I believe. I think that was right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But Magny beat the Leech, and I mean, he had a great performance. And the Leech wasn't really able to do much of anything in that fight. And Daniel Rodriguez fought the Leech. It was back and forth. A lot of people think the Leech won, but I still think just the style overall of Rodriguez is going to be very effective against a guy in Magny who throws those straight punches but doesn't use. It's going to be effective because Magny's style is not going to be as effective due to the movement, the angle changes, the check right hook, and getting the outside foot on his opponent. D-Rod is going for that outside foot from the first minute of the fight to the last minute of the fight. And he picks up on the combos, he picks up on your patterns, he picks up on the timing, got very good timing with the jab. It's going to be a little bit harder to land the jab on Magny because, one, Magny has a great jab himself. That's one of the staples of his games, like we said, the 1-2, the long straight punches, using his reach, maximizing his reach, using front kicks, high kicks, etc., etc. I could see him using some grappling, but D-Rod has some submission offense, and he's pretty good at takedown defense, so I don't necessarily think we're going to see too much on the wrestling offense side from Magny because of the defensive wrestling aspect and the defensive wrestling success that Daniel Rodriguez has. I mean, you look at the grappling statistics, and he's got a 73% takedown defense, while Magny only has a 40% takedown accuracy rate. But he shoots 2.31 takedowns per 15-minute fight. But the 73% takedown defense rate, I don't think it's going to be easy for Magny to get Rodriguez down unless he's able to bank that third round. And, with a takedown, if he's able to tire out Rodriguez. But you look at the striking numbers, and it's 3.59 strikes landed per minute for Magny to 7.75 strikes landed per minute for Daniel Rodriguez. That's almost a 4 strikes landed per minute advantage on the side of D-Rod. Magny has a 46% accuracy, and even though D-Rod almost lands 3 or 4 more strikes per minute, he also has a higher accuracy at 49% accuracy rate for his significant strikes. And he absorbs more per minute, so he's not as good defensively as Magny, but that's because of the length and the reach. 2.16 strikes absorbed per minute for Magny to 5.35 for D-Rod Rodriguez. But overall defensive stats are actually on the side of Rodriguez, which is kind of surprising to me. 55% striking defense for Neil Magny to a 57% striking defense rate for D-Rod. I really just think this is a good matchup for D-Rod. I mean, you look at the fights with Neil Magny more recently, and we'll pull it up real quick. Go to Neil Magny, 26-9 overall. His recent fights, he had that second round guillotine choke submission over Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, got dominated, got thrown around, got submitted. Had some decent defense throughout the fight early, but I mean, it was just the Shavkat show. He won the decision. It was a split decision over Max Griffin. A lot of people believe Griffin did enough to win the fight. I just watched the fight today. I honestly think it was the right call. I think that Neil Magny did do enough to win those rounds, especially in the third, and that's why I think he'll be so effective in the third round here against D-Rod, who I'm not saying he slows down, but I think that just the style of Magny will be better, in that third round. He has that decision victory over Jeff Neal. I did not expect that. He looked great, shut down basically everything that Neal had to offer. He lost a unanimous decision to Chiesa. I mean, Chiesa is one of the best grapplers in that division, and he just out-grappled, out-wrestled, took him down at will. He has that unanimous decision victory over Robbie Lawler and a unanimous decision victory over Anthony Rocco Martin, that unanimous decision victory over Li Jingliang, and then the knockout to Santiago Ponzinibbio. After that knockout, he took almost 2 years off. and came back November 2018. He came back March 2020, went on a 3-fight win streak, lost to Chiesa, then went on a 2-fight win streak and beat Jeff Neal and Max Griffin, and then lost to Shavkat Rakhmonov. I know a lot of people think that Griffin did do enough to beat Magny, so maybe they think he should be on a 2-fight losing streak, but honestly, I think Magny's on the downside of his career, and I think D-Rod is kind of starting to pick up that pace. He's starting to pick up the pressure. I mean, he's 7-1 in the UFC, and I'm not just making these statements because he's 7-1 overall in the UFC and he's probably going to be the more popular guy to pick, but I just think that the style that D-Rod employs with the boxing, the angles, the outside foot placement, him being so good at getting away from the power shots of his opponent, especially when they're orthodox, which Magny is. I think that jab is going to work maybe early for Magny, but it's just going to be a matter of time before D-Rod gets that outside foot, and those constant outside angles, getting away from the power right hand and negating the jab with the check hook over it. That style, I think, is tailor-made to beat a guy like Magny. Even with the reach advantage, even with the height advantage, I still think D-Rod's timing, his mixing up of his combinations, his ability to use fakes and feints, his ability to use that jab, his ability to find those shots on awkward angles, getting that outside foot all the time. Magny's style, like I said, works on guys who are more stationary targets, who kind of walk forward and who don't use a whole lot of lateral movement. And I think the lateral movement, the check hook, the straight left, the overhand left, the jab from Rodriguez from southpaw, I think it's just going to be a tailor-made matchup here for D-Rod. I think he could potentially lose the third round if he gasses and Magny can pick up the pace because we know he has that cardio. But I think D-Rod wins this fight, and I think he does so pretty decisively. I don't think he gets a finish because, Magny is pretty durable. We've seen him get finished before. He did get dropped by Max Griffin. He got submitted by Shavkat, so maybe you say the durability is a little bit off. I think it is possible that D-Rod does catch Neil Magny with a shot, but I think this fight goes the distance, and I think D-Rod gets it done on the scorecards. I think we see Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez defeat Neil the Haitian Sensation Magny via a 29-28 unanimous decision. I could see it being split because there is that potential that Magny has a really, really good third round and maybe it sways some judges to pick him. But I think we see D-Rod move up in the rankings, and that boxing, the outside foot, just the style of D-Rod is going to cause a lot of trouble for Magny in this fight, in my opinion. So my pick is the number 14 ranked Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez to defeat the number 13 ranked Haitian Sensation Neil Magny via 29-28 unanimous decision.